Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to Season 8 of Paldea United's team reveals. For those that missed it yesterday, here's a quick overview of what to expect from today's video. Paldea United is a league that I have managed for almost 2 years, and it's been a blast. This season, for our showdown divisions, even though I'm not playing, I'll be here every week for weekly recaps that I can't wait to share with you guys. Yesterday, we got to see the Scarlet Division and all the strong teams that they have to offer. Scarlet Division was also where most of our returning players found themselves, along with a few new faces. Violet Division, though, is a completely different story. Almost everyone here are new faces, which means we have no idea what to expect from some of these players. I'm so excited to see what you all are capable of, so let's go ahead and get right into it. Introducing Paldea United's Season 8 Violet Division. Alright, y'all, so we are here with Violet Division's first pick. I am joined today by another member of my mod team. You heard about him yesterday in the Scarlet Division video. We're joined by Niv.
Hello.
So Niv's going to join me. We're going to go through all the teams, again, similar to what we did yesterday, just kind of give our thoughts on everything. We're not necessarily ranking any of these, but just kind of want to share what we like, what we don't like, and kind of give everyone an overview of what to expect from the Violet Division. I'm super excited. There's a lot of new faces, some returning as well, and overall, I just think that Season 8 is going to be a very fun time all around. Going into our first team here, so NP, again, new face, New England Patrats, and actually similar to what we saw in Scarlet, took Dragapult in the first round, which is, I mean, always a solid pick. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I definitely do like seeing Dragapult picked up. It's, usually one that gets picked up almost immediately, it seems. Same with Iron Valiant. Really good speed tier, definitely a threat if you want, whether you want to run it as, focus dash to tank a hit and deal a lot of damage twice, or run it as specs and just really hit hard. Even though it's weird that the Mon is technically classified as a physical attacker, it's not.
You mentioned speed tiers too, which honestly, this team is just so good on speed tiers. I mean, you have obviously Polt, Greninja right after that. Even skipping down a ways, we see things like Cincino, which is obviously a really good speed tier. And then even like somewhere in like the hundreds, you have like Zapdos and a few others. And if that wasn't enough, we also paired it with Leavanny for sticky web support, which, I mean, just all around speed just doesn't look like it's going to be a problem for this team at all.
Oh yeah, no, this team is going to be running laps around their opponents, it seems.
One thing that I really love about this is the support that Hex Dragapult has, obviously pairing super well with Glamora, and honestly just the hazard support that Glamora is bringing. Dragapult, Gren, all these kind of like harder hitting but maybe, frailer mons love that added support. And I think that that's going to be a strategy that we see MP play quite a lot in the season.
Oh, for sure. With Toxic Debris on Glamora, easily getting any poisons or toxics up. As well as, Tigaton could be running some Thunder Waves. Same with Rotom Heat. Gastrodon could get Scald Burns or any toxic. And same with Registeel going for Thunder Waves. I believe it has that.
It does, yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of just overall, status implementations, it seems, with this. And then Hex can just run wild.
The one thing that I do think is also worthwhile to point out, the Terra captains on this team. I do think they're strong. Obviously, Cincino is your basic tidy up sweeper. Doesn't always have to. It could easily just run a choice item and hit hard enough. Registeel, very solid defensively, and these Terra types are going to help it immensely, kind of patch some of the more common holes of the type weaknesses that we're seeing on the team. Leavanny, I like the Ghost for added spin block on those webs, but I mean, just as easily, you could see that thing be offensive, and I like the Terra Ice to be able to get the stab on Triple Axle as well.
Oh yeah, I really do like a lot of the Terra Captain choices as well for their typings. The only one I think I would have liked to see a little more is on Registeel. Instead of the Terra Fairy, more so going like the Terra fighting to really just add that added boost to the body press.
Yeah, 100%. I think you're gonna see that quite a lot as well. I mean, it's common, right? Like it's tested, it works. So
Yeah, it's a reliable set.
Yeah, even if you see it coming, like it can be a little bit hard to break. So I love seeing that. He did a great job pairing his hazards with more of deterrence. Obviously, you have the Ghost type in Dragapult. You also have Defiant and Zapdos, which really is going to make sure that hazards stay up on the field. It's going to be very hard for him to lose those, or for other people to clear them, rather.
Yeah, not everybody's really going to be wanting to try to run Defog when a Defiant Zapdos wants to just hop on in and take that free boost.
Couple of areas as we're getting ready to kind of wrap up with this one that I think could have been improved on. And again, this is not by saying any teams are bad. These are just things that I think Niv and I can point out of potential improvements. The hazard removal of his own is going to be a little bit rough. So Glamora, obviously Mortal Spin, but can't do that on Steel types. And then Cincino could tidy up, but I don't think it's kind of counterintuitive to the playstyle. You know, he doesn't want to remove his hazards the same way that he wants to keep them off his field. So it might be a little bit rough. That's where I could see some people taking advantage of the hole in that team.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Glamora does just kind of, it's only the Mortal Spin. So as you said, Steel type's blocking that. And then, yeah, Cincino, since Tidy Up, unfortunately, does it to all of them like Defog, which, I don't know. I think it should only clean up your side of the field, but maybe that just makes that too broken.
I would love that. I wish that that's what it was. It might be a bit broken, but that move isn't widely distributed. So, you know, maybe it'd be a cool little buff in the future.
Yeah.
No, all around, I mean, super strong team. Really, really love what MP did with this. Excited to see how he plays with it. And yeah, that's about all I could think of here. Anything you want to add on to that?
No, I'm looking forward to see how they do this season, really.
Sweet. Well, then moving on to our second team, we have MrMonkey, the ringleaders, and he's not necessarily a new face. We have had him as part of the league for a little bit now. He's participated in a few other seasons and side leagues, and he's been fun to have, and he's just now coming back around to join us up for Season 8. So, Monkey, welcome back. We're happy to have you.
Yeah, welcome back.
And dude, I mean, we see this pairing the same that we saw in Scarlet. Golden Go Gliscor is just such a strong pairing, and you know, I really love that we're seeing it on both divisions. I think it's going to be a very hard core for a lot of teams to break through.
Yeah, I saw that and I was like, oh, that's just the tried and true combo right there.
It's having played against it and helping build with players that did draft that core before, there's not a lot that really wants to take it on. And then backing even some of those other defensive holes that it could, you know, overwhelm it, you have Rotom Wash right afterwards. And that's honestly just, I think, a really good trio of mons that are going to wall majority of what wants to come this team's way.
Oh yeah, seeing the Rotom, like, Golden Go and then Gliscor, was like, okay, that's kind of a good bread and butter. Seeing the Rotom Wash added on top of it, I was like, alright, this is going to be very annoying to get around.
No, I'm very glad that I do not have to play against this one.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Right? But, you know, we're talking about the defensive synergy. I think we need to put just as much emphasis on this team's wall breaking. Specifically, you know, it's Terra Captains, but then also something like Entei. You know, starting with the Terra Captains, I love me some Terra Regidrago. It is such a good mon. Having used it in the VDL, it was one of my, honestly, just fan favorite mons to use.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of Regidrago gameplay, primarily from you. Definitely shows out a lot of power. I do like the Terra Steel, just adds a little bit more to the defense. Terra Dragon adds a lot to its offensive capabilities with Dragon Energy and constant outrages. Terra Fire was an interesting one, so I'm curious to see what that one entails. But I do
Well,
also like some of the other ones.
yeah, having used it, I liked Terrifier more so to obviously break the additional steel types. You could go fire, you could go ground, but I liked being immune to burn and not having to fear any kind of will-o-wisp sets from people. So, I am actually all for the Terrifier, and it gets Earthquake, but its best fire type coverage is Fire Fang. So having that little bit of extra boost from Terra Blast actually made quite the difference when I used it.
Okay. I pick it up now that and being able to be immune to being burned and just being able to go on the full off and like physical offense, that makes a lot more sense then.
Yeah, and I mean, again, moving down the list, Diagonal, definitely going to be more, I think, support into this build. Can easily be offensive in the right matchup with its Bolt Beam coverage going Terra Electric, and then obviously Terra Ghost, just overall being a good defensive typing for it. I don't think we're going to see too much from it shine just based off the rest of the team, but I think it provides nice support for the rest of the Mons.
Yeah, plus 105 speed, good rapid spinner, good special defense, decent offenses as well with it. And then the Terra Electric due to having levitate, so no more weaknesses. Unless you're going against a Zygarde, I guess, but we don't have that, so.
Niv's out here listing Mons that aren't even in the game anymore as potential counters.
Hey, I had to deal with it.
Hey, Legends EA is coming soon. We might see it.
Yeah, we might see it. We might see it again.
The last Terra Captain, obviously being Metacham, just such a potent wall breaker. The speed tiers, obviously, and we're going to get a little bit more into the speed tiers as a whole, but with Metacham specifically, definitely suffers a little bit. But with good team support, there's plenty of T-Wave on this team to be able to help mitigate that a bit. This is easily running Scarf can still be a massive wall breaker for teams that maybe don't have the greatest switch-ins to close combat. So I'm excited to see this. I think it'll be really fun.
Yeah, I really do like Metacham as well for being able to just like pivot in, do a quick like fake out, stop them for like a turn, a little bit of chip damage. Maybe those end up making all the difference. And yeah, I think Terra fighting high jump kicks are just going to rip through some people.
Yeah, 100%. And I mentioned speed tiers. I think that it is worthwhile to point out that is an area where I think this team lacks just a little bit. Obviously, with Ogerpon being 110 as your fastest speed tier, would have loved to seen something, maybe a little bit higher. And I think that we're gonna see some teams with those faster, more offensive wall breakers be able to afford running something like Modest or Adamant against Monkey, which is going to be something that he's going to have to really just deal with and battle against. There's not many ways of preventing it.
Yeah, the only benefit I would see with if you have kind of lower speed tiers compared to somebody who has much higher ones like we saw with MP is if you know you can't outspeed them, just throw it all into bulk.
Very fair. Yeah, I think it's gonna be something they have to deal with, but I think the team defensively enough can be able to withstand hits like that to where I don't think it's gonna be too big of an issue. Just something that I think he should be ready for in most of his matchups.
Yeah, just be mindful of it. Kind of keep that in the back of your mind.
Yeah, no, I think overall pretty good team from Monkey, and I think that's about all we have for this one.
Yep, sounds good.
All right, so going into our third pick, we have Pandamonium and the Scarlet Knights, another new face. And going into the third pick, those first few picks from him are stupid good together. Obviously, Valiant making it down to him. Not necessarily surprising, but at the same time, I think that he got very lucky that he got it because it just is so good on this team.
Yeah, this team has a lot of offensive firepower. Iron Valiant, Ogerpon Wellspring, Garchomp with like Swords Dance, and I know Infernape could do pretty well. Yeah, there's a lot of ways to just punch through a lot of walls with this.
Yeah, he definitely went for more of the, I think, hyper offensive build into this. The team doesn't have really much of any bulk outside of Bronzong, which, without any kind of good, reliable recovery, it's going to get worn down quick. You can run Garchomp defensively as well, so I think those are going to be the two most common defensively mons that we'll see from Pandemonium. But he's going to rely super heavily on just being ahead, heavy prediction, and really trying to maximize this team's offensive capabilities.
Yeah, I think with the Regieleki and Bronzong pick, like those are just two screen setter options. So getting those screens up may be able to kind of help with protecting with a lot of the defensive, like that might be lacking.
Yeah,
the teams that could kind of protect them while they just go all out, go on that entire offense. And then Galvantula for, sticky web support.
which is kind of surprising with Galvantula on this team. I mean, the speed tiers here are amazing, and I really don't think there's much that necessarily benefits from webs. I mean, Infernape, Garchomp, we had another team in the Scarlet Division that also paired those with webs, and they definitely like it, but I think the more offensive pressuring mons are already significantly faster.
Yeah, I think primarily it's like having the screens up can allow Iron Valiant to go more into the like booster energy for offense rather than booster energy for its speed in case they go up against, things like a Dragapult, things that can try to outspeed it if they were scarfed, where now they're all of a sudden slow just to their neutral, if not slower, and Iron Valiant can go for an attack or special attack boost instead of a speed boost.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. That definitely makes sense. And like I said, like the webs are never a bad thing to have. So, I think that we'll definitely see some situations where it is a game changer.
Right.
I really like Aleki paired with Ogerpon here. Really being able to have Ogerpon pressure and early on hopefully take out the ground types and open up Aleki to be able to come in and freely just spam its Volt Switches or Thunderbolts, I think is going to be a very strong strategy that we see from Pandemonium.
Oh, for sure. That's going to be really nice. I've personally used Ogerpon Wellspring last season. It was a great mon to get to use. So I'm looking forward to see what Pandemonium does. Maybe I can learn something.
No, I'm all for this. And those are really the only kind of takeaways I have. Obviously, the webs are going to be helpful. Don't think they're necessarily needed. I would have liked to seen maybe a bulkier fairy, but that's more so just for flexibility than it's needed on the team comp wise. I mean, if you're leaning into this more offensive, hyper offensive style, bulk is not necessarily anything needed. But I could really see something like, I'm going to use Sylveon or Floor just as my example, but something along those lines that really just pair well with something like Bronzong and keep it healthy.
Or just like Wish as like a strong bulky like fairy to just do like some Wish support into your offensive like Hypermons, because they're just going to want to go fast and hit hard, so they're going to take some damage when they don't end up killing something.
Yeah, no, I think that would be one of the only few changes I could think to really take this team up the next level. I think this is going to be a very, very threatening team for others to have to prep against.
Oh yeah, all of its cores are just hitting every mark that they need.
All right, we're going to keep it on moving. We're up to Boaz here with the KC Bug Club. Again, another new face, and we're going to be hearing a lot of that over the next several teams. And I think that there's a lot of good to say about the team. The one thing that I think I will always say about most weather teams with this is that they perform super well and are things that if your teams that you're up against don't have great counterplay to, can easily steamroll, but that makes your team building extremely predictable, extremely linear. And most teams are going to be able to tech something as simple as just Rain Dance on a mon to be able to disrupt the weather strategies here.
Yeah, like I see Great Tusk and Slitherwing both would definitely benefit from having the Sun Up from Ninetales, actually, and Brute Bonnet. I missed that one. So 3 different like proto boosts for that. I guess in the if they might bring some Rain Dance, just slap a booster energy on as a backup, so that way you still keep your boost even if they change the weather.
Yeah, and I like a lot about just the sun-based mons. I do feel like Latios could have been switched out for something like a Walking Wake, and that would have just, really elevated the team. I know I said that, sun teams are linear, but if you're going to commit more than half your team to it, I think you lean fully into it. And Wake would have just been, in my opinion, a much stronger dragon type to add to this roster.
Yeah, giving it as well just another proto boost, so you can go for the speed or just go for its offense, and then just really lean into one of those 2 areas where Latios kind of does the same thing, speed and its offense. So.
And I mean, it's still plenty of things I like about this. There's always a strong debate of Ninetales versus Torkoal, and I do think that both have varied reasons to go one or the other. Torkoal objectively is probably better, but what I really love here with Ninetales is the Healing Wish into things like Great Tusk, or obviously Latios, or any of these mons will really appreciate being able to tank those hits early on and then come back in maybe in the late game and have another opportunity to set up.
Yeah, definitely. Of the drought users, I really just kind of like Ninetales in general. A little bit more, a lot faster, more offensive. Torkoal has just never really been the one that I've ever really leaned into for trying to set up a sun.
Really?
That's just through my own personal experience. I mean, I've been playing since Gen 3, so I just kind of grew up around like Torkoal and then Ninetales, and I don't know. I just like the more offensive capabilities out of Ninetales, but granted, I also really like Alola and Ninetales, so that might be a little bit of favoritism.
It very well could be. I think you're sleeping on something like a Shell Smash or Eruption Torkoal, but we don't have to get into that now.
Yeah.
Couple other things I think can point out about this team. Again, it's a strong Sun team. I really like it. The Terra Caps, both being boosted with the Sun, are going to just only elevate that offensive potential even further. A couple of things I think I could have seen. I'm not a big fan of Oricorio into this. I like having a Ghost type, yes, but I don't think I like having its strongest stab move in Hurricane be 50% accurate in the Sun. I think that's kind of going to hinder it a bit in what it can use. I honestly think we could have seen something like a Chlorophyll abusing, Venusaur, maybe at a lower cost point, something like Victory Bell, just to take advantage and kind of buff up these speed tiers a little bit more, because they're not bad by any means. They're not necessarily great either. They have some pretty big drop-offs.
Yeah. The other thing that I always kind of see with the downside of Oricorio is when you're limited to just like one of its typings, which in this one we only have the one, whereas some other ones you can do one of the 4, so it could be a really big mix-up, and having it as a Terra Captain. That was my experience with it before, is I could use any of its 4 forms and a Terra Captain, so Revelation Dance would be essentially its Terra Blast. So that was a lot more fun. That's where I felt it would fit on the team. I agree. It really just kind of sits there as like a spin blocker, and I guess it is a defogger if needed.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. Getting defog support into this is going to be nice. I mean that's about all I can think of with those here. It's cool to see another new face that's also partnering in VDL. Again, we've had plenty of crossover. Expect to see more here when we plan to launch our Wi-Fi division here in January. But for the time being, Boaz, I hope that hope the team performs well. Hope you have a good time.
Yeah, indeed.
We're moving into our next pick. We have Ben here, and I've actually had an opportunity to get to know Ben a little bit during the draft and just at the beginning of the season here. Super nice guy, and what I really think is cool is this is his first real-time experiencing draft, and so I'm very honored that he decided to choose us and hang out with us for his first experience. And I think for his first time drafting, he did a pretty good job on the board.
Yeah, it's always nice having new people. I mean, this is also where I started, so starting off with like Blaziken, that's kind of interesting just to start off with a 15-point mon, whereas like a lot of previous ones have always been in the 20s, 21s, 19s. Like, so this is the first one that was actually just like a kind of middle of the board pick with Blaziken as their first round.
Yeah, and it's really wild because you can notice too that he really stuck in the middle of the board for most of his picks. There's no real like top tier mons, top tier threats out of this. He kept it very, balanced in that sense.
Yeah, like everything around just well-rounded like point management. So for it being their first time drafting, great job.
I think that Blaziken, even though it's a little bit lesser cost than some of those top tier mons, just as easily can be an MVP and a super threatening mon. Just being able to have the Swords Dance sets and even running some special sets as well, I think is going to put a lot of teams under some pressure in a very early sense of the game.
Oh yeah, and because speed boost, that's always nice. Thankfully, it's not banned. And then Blaze Kick, I think he gets close combat. High jump kick's mainly the one I always saw it use, which I think that's kind of an insane move for a Blaziken to try to use.
I don't think I ever have the guts to run high jump kick when it does get CC, but
I can't run it on any mon. Like, I would just like, I will never hit, and when I come crashing and lose that mon, I'm like, I don't want to use this.
Yeah, it is rough. I do think that with mons like Blaziken and a few other ones that we'll get into, this team's end game potential is fairly strong. Where I think it is going to somewhat struggle is that the fact that it is a bit more passive, getting to that position where those endgame cleaners can set up might be a bit of a struggle.
Yeah, they're gonna have to really kind of work on chipping some of their opponents down and removing any like potential threats, but I do like some of their overall like sweep potential. Metagross with agility and weakness policy, I've run that worked out great. Blastoise Shell Smash, that's just widely known. Sylveon with Calm Minds and Draining Kiss. And then they also have a Lurantis, so I'm excited to see how they do their Lurantis as well.
So what's very funny, I mentioned this in the Scarlet video yesterday, that I successfully convinced 2 players across both divisions to not only pick Lurantis, but make it your Terra captain. Niv, I know I got you on it, and Ben, I did the same. I was helping him kind of pick out through a few things on the board. And I will say it again, I will say it every time it comes up. Easily one of my favorite Terra captains to run. It is just such a huge threat.
Like, looking at its overall like move pool, I do agree. I think in the right conditions, if you get it like set up and aimed at the right direction for it, it will put in a lot of work. So I'm excited to use it. I'm excited to see how Ben uses it. Honestly, I hope neither of us disappoint.
Ben made an interesting change in his free agencies for his Terra captains. Originally, we had Blastoise as well as Lurantis, and then he decided to change it over to Sylveon, which I don't know how I feel about it. I think Sylveon is obviously a very strong mon under Terra. I do think Blastoise arguably would have been stronger.
Yeah, it's one of those, like, it's a toss-up, because Sylveon can definitely put in a lot of work, but I do also think, like, a shell-smashing, like, Terra Blastoise would put in a lot of work, depending on what typings, like, you choose for your Terras, and then what you end up, like, running with it, having access to Terra Blast, like, that can just put in a lot of work, depending on, like, what your opponents may end up having. So I don't know. I kind of agree that Blastoise may have been the better one, but Sylveon I think will still put in a lot of work.
No, I completely agree, and I love that we're still on Blastoise with this. That having the Clodsire for those unaware matchups where someone techs a Mirror Herb for Shell Smash.
Yeah.
Nim is very familiar with the strategy. A little spoiler for some uploads he may have here in the future, but
Yep.
I think that's a very fun pairing. Even though I said that this team is fairly passive, I think the wall breaking that this team brings is going to definitely help in getting those late game cleaners really primed and set up for a position to win.
For sure. That's what I'm really kind of anticipating with this.
Overall, strong team, like I said. Ben, we are happy to have you, and good luck to you during the season.
Yep. Welcome to the crew.
All right. So we're at Hyde here, and I will give you guys just a little bit of insight. So Hyde here is one of my longtime friends. I have known him for well over 10 years at this point. He is actually the reason that I got into playing competitive mods at all. I was never part of it, and he introduced me to Showdown, and ever since then, I have been playing, which is a really cool thing.
The man, the myth, the legend.
Now the downside to this, and if you ask him, it's not a downside, but he has not played any form of Mons, any form of competitive since, I want to say, like Gen 6, since right when Mega Evolution was introduced.
Well, I will say, at least if that's the case, they missed out on the worst format or the worst, I guess, scheme or theme that they had, which was the Dynamax. You missed out on that having to be competitive. I'm sorry, I hated that. So glad we're away from it.
Yeah, I would hate to still be in a Dynamax meta for sure. So you have a bit of a history on Hyde here. I gotta talk about the team and Hyde's philosophy with building this team. You can obviously see a bit of a common theme here. He really enjoys his fighting type, and I guess going into this matchup, you also see that he didn't really draft any special attacking fighting type. So I guess his philosophy here is just going to be punch hard, and if you run into a wall, punch harder.
Yeah, punch harder. Those psychic and flying and fairy types, very scary. But not if you punch them really, really hard.
Exactly.
I think Urshifu is going to put in a lot of work with the constant crits. I think that will help, but also it will depend on what comes after him.
He's got really good fighting types, like getting Annihilate in the first round, pairing it with Urshifu on the next. Even dropping down a little ways, having Komodo, Conkeldurr, two really strong Terra captains. Like, individually, these mods are all going to be amazing, and I just think that Hyde is going to run into a lot of counterplay of people teching even the most minor forms of flying or fairy or psychic moves, just because it's going to easily punch those holes.
Yeah, that's going to be the unfortunate part, because there's a lot of mons that just get things like that, like, what is that, off the top of my head, Jolteon with Alluring Voice now.
Yep.
Didn't have that before, but now it does. Could easily just run that, and that's going to start hurting. That Komodo could survive that. Depends on the ability you run.
This is true. We'll have to play around with it. I'm so happy to have him back. Love that he wanted to join us for this, and it is very much on character for the team. So I definitely wish them the best, and I really hope that we see some funny moments from them. I think we're gonna definitely enjoy watching some of these games.
Oh, for sure. These are I'm going to be tuning in every single time because I want to see it punch a lot of things.
And you all should too. So make sure you're back here every week for recaps. That way you can see this fighting type team go all the way to finals and prove us all wrong.
Yeah, that's going to be the funniest thing, honestly, if that happens. We will all have to bow.
We're all bowing to the fighting types, which ultimately, if that happens, Hyde here came and he conquered, and I'm all for it.
If he does it, I'm definitely doing the same thing. I will do an entire just mono-type team.
All right, we're going to keep it moving. We're making good time here. Man, the Scarlet video yesterday was so much longer, and I hope that no one in Violet feels like we're trying to breeze through it, but honestly, we're just we're being efficient, and I like it. So going into our next pick here, we have Schizo, and again, just another strong, I'd say kind of leaning into the balance build here. Darkrai, Latias are very solid speed tiers, can be run definitely very offensively. The Terra caps down here are where I think this team really shines. I think Bisharp is a strong Terra captain. I'm surprised he didn't go Terra Reverum over Bisharp.
That's what I was going to say. I think Terra Reverum, because I mean, we've both seen the experience of that. That puts in a lot of work and is a huge threat. I honestly think if Reverum can be Terra'd, it should be Terra'd.
Yeah, I'm surprised it didn't go Terra. I mean, it's still a decent Mon without it, right? Like, it's still obviously Shift Gear with its dual stab and Iron Heads and Gunk Shots are still very strong. Also gets things like Parting Shot, so it can play some utility into there. But if you really want to open the door for it to be a strong setup sweeper, it really does love that Terra coverage.
Yeah, Terra Ground high horsepower, I think just really gives it that coverage. Or, I mean, sure, Terra Flying, get it away from its 4 times ground weakness.
So true. Still think Bisharp can be very successful, and I think we're kind of going to get into a lot of why when we talk about the rest of the team here. Kilowattrel, super strong speed tier, really loves the coverage of Terra, and I believe we also saw that in Scarlet as well. So dual Kilowattrel Terras in both divisions this season. I think it's going to be a good Mon.
Oh yeah, that Mon can put in a lot of work. It will kind of play nicely with the Pelipper for the rain. The Pelipper is actually still only kind of confusing to me because it's like it will set up the rain, and I'm like, really? Kilowattrel seems like it's the only one that truly benefits. I mean, sure, Alola can probably do something.
Yeah, it kind of is. I mean, Aloe, what, you're gonna boost its Scalds maybe, and instead of
boost Scalds or Aqua Rings if you want to wall something.
So instead of 8% on Scald, we're gonna do 12 now. So just watch out for those. But
yeah.
I do like the 100% accurate Thunders and Hurricanes from Kilo. I think it's definitely going to appreciate it. This team has very good recovery options with kind of a dual Wish going on from Aloe and even Latias, which doesn't commonly run Wish, but it can. It also gets Healing Wish, so that's super strong. The slow pivots of the team, being Belly Bolt and Pelipper, does function well there. So I think that's going to really aid in getting in these kind of more, glass cannon kind of hitters that Schizo went for.
Yeah, and speaking of like pivots, that might be something that they're going to need to keep an eye out for. Is people who want to run like U-turn pivots, because like Darkrai, Latias, think Iron Crown and Bisharp, as well as Serena, like not really going to be wanting to take those like bug moves depending on where it's coming from.
Yeah. A few other holes I think that could be talked about here. You already mentioned the U-turn. There are some, I'd say, noticeable gaps in the speed tiers. I mean, he's got some very fast mons, obviously. You know, Darkrai, Kilowattrel, Latias. Then it drops down to, you know, Iron Crown in the 90s. Bisharp, I think, is, I want to say somewhere in the 80s. Reverend back in the 90s. Like, there's just some holes in the speed tiers that I think could have been filled in just a little bit better.
Yeah, that is like the only other downside is like with speed tiers not wanting to have like such of those like huge gaps as we've discussed before, because then you just really open up your opponents to being able to run more offensively than defensively, or just like trying to speed creep. Like sometimes now they won't have to.
Exactly. And the hazard setting on this team, his removal is really strong, but the ability to set hazards himself is a little lacking. You know, he's got Bisharp that sets up rocks, and Revrim, I think, sets up T-spikes, but outside of that, am I missing anything? I don't think anything else really gets
that's it. That's really all they're gonna end up getting out of that, which I'm not too confident with having like Bisharp as a dedicated like rocks like setter, or Revrim trying to set up T-spikes. Maybe they come in handy, but I just don't know if they're actually going to be setting up a lot of hazards this year.
That's going to be rough. You know, I think especially those mons like Darkrai, really Kilowattrel as well, really need that added damage boost from the hazards damage, and I think you're going to see both of those mons just barely miss out on some important KOs without the help of rocks at the very least.
Yeah, I mean, I think the lack of rocks is going to be what really does it in, because people can just start running some focus sashes, so then they can just hit back really, really hard because they don't have to worry about them being broken. There's no like hazards to break it.
Yeah. And then, you know, looking at the rest of the team, doesn't have a fairy type either. So surprised doesn't even have Terra Fairy. I'm kind of scrolling and making sure that I'm not missing anything, but he's got really strong dragon, really strong steel, dual steals, but missing out on that final fairy type coverage.
Yeah, and then in terms of like your fire, water, grass core, your only fire type, it seems, is going to be Terra Fire Bisharp.
Yeah, that's true too. I didn't even consider that. It seems like he's missing out on just a couple mons to really finish out these cores, and I think especially with the healing support that you have with Latias and Aloe, I think would have really benefited to have those cores finalized.
Yeah, definitely a little bit of holes, but hopefully they'll be able to fix that either in the coming weeks, or they'll just prove to us that they don't need them.
Yeah, I mean, again, none of these teams are bad. We're looking at these objectively as like, you know, as if you hadn't gotten sniped or there were still mons on the board that fit those roles. So there may not have been, but you know, this is just more so from an objective position of just saying like, you know, it's good to have a fresh pair of eyes. So I still think Schizo's got a strong team, and I really like a lot about the team. There's just a couple changes I think we can make to make it even better.
Yep, I do agree.
Next up, we have another VDL player. So Alikalkos coming in, and did a lot really early on. Nabbed the dual regen core with Corn and Slowking. I think that's going to be very annoying for a lot of teams to break.
Yeah, the defensive core, like this is another one of those, just like the MrMonkey's team, really good defensive core, having to try to play around it. I always kind of struggle with trying to play around like those defensive cores, so you know, always good. Tornado Therian, great, amazing, like great for pivot, regenerator, awesome. Slowking Galarian, same thing. And for setting up the snow, which I guess Excalibur might be able to benefit from that. I don't remember if it truly gets anything. I can't remember if it got like anything like Slush Rush. I know some other like Alolan Sandslash wants that.
Yeah, so it doesn't have any boosting abilities. It does get the Ice type boost in its defense, which is super strong in setting up with its D-dances.
That's fair, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, no, definitely benefits from the chilly reception into that. And then it's also backed again by Grimmsnarl with screen support. So just to be able to enable that even further, as well as Moltres. And I think that having screen support is, in some ways, even more terrifying than something like Excalibur with screens.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Looking at the team, I was like, oh yeah, Grimmsnarl, there's like a fairy type. I just was thinking of it as a fairy, not even just as a screen setter.
No, yeah, I don't necessarily like that it's the only fairy type, just because it's not a fighting resist, but you back that up with Slowking and Torn. That's really going to patch that hole for that fighting kind of coverage or defensive synergy that you're looking for. I mean, just overall, this team's defensive synergy all the way around. We haven't even gotten the lower picks with Heatran, Vaporeon for wish support. Like, this team defensively looks like it's going to be one of the hardest to break in the entire division.
Yeah. And then, yeah, looking at like some of their Terra Captains, speaking about like Vaporeon, Vaporeon getting Terra Captain, fine. I don't really fully understand it with Hisuian Quillfish. I mean, Vaporeon I see more so as like, tanking a lot of hits, passing off wishes. I honestly would have liked to see maybe a more offensive like Grimmsnarl, like bulk up, draining punch, like Terra fighting, even Berserker. I mean, at one point, give it Terra Steel, try to go for some Iron Heads or anything with that it can benefit with Tough Claws, and then Toedscroll is, I don't know, I like its typing of grass ground, but maybe giving it Terra, like just making those three the Terra captains instead of having just two, opens up a little bit more for the team, but I don't know.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think the Terra captains here, compared to the rest of the team, really just aren't as impactful. There's just not, I don't think they're going to swing many games. Vaporeon, I could see, changing to be able to take, either a grass or electric hit with those two Terra types and maybe opening up a position for it to do like a Calm Mind or Acid Armor setup. So that could be something good to look at. But yeah, I mean, I think what's really going to shine in this team is it's more, higher picks with backs with Moltres, and then again, it's Regen Core just being super strong.
Yeah, the Regen Core I think will be hard to kind of break through. The only thing is, like, outside of Galarian, Moltres, and Excalibur, those really seem to be like the two heavy hitters of the team, and if both of those are checked or removed, I think Alikalkos might struggle a little bit with trying to put a lot of pressure on their opponents after that, like outside of doing just chip damage and regenerator constantly.
And then chip damage is gonna be something that also works against Alikalkos, just because the hazard removal here is gonna be a bit rough. You do have Toedscroll, which thankfully it's Rapid Spin is not one of the moves that makes it go last. So still that decent speed tier for a Rapid Spin is nice. But outside of that, I don't think there's a world where Toedscroll can come every game, and when those games don't come, you're stuck with hazards on the field the entire game.
Yeah, for sure. And then those are going to be the games that if they have sticky webs, you're going to need that Toedscroll.
Exactly. Anytime there's webs, you really are going to want those. I mean, mainly for backs. I mean, yes, can it run boots? Absolutely. But I do think it would appreciate, a few other items and not necessarily being solely limited to putting on boots.
Oh yeah, it would prefer its loaded dice probably for skill shot.
Exactly. So No, I mean, outside of that, I could say, a couple other things. The speed tiers could be a bit better. There's a pretty big drop off from Thorn at 121, dropping all the way down to, I believe it's base 100 with Toad Scroll. Everything
Yep,
else is
it
going to
is.
start falling below. So speed is going to be a bit of a problem until those two main wall breakers in Moltres and Max can boost up its speed.
Yeah, they might find that to be some issues. Maybe Baxcalibur probably going to run either Dragon Dance or Scale Shot, at least gets it up there. Moltres Galarian, I don't know. Does it actually get agility for that?
It does. Its most common set's going to be that Nasty Plot agility.
Ah, that's fair, yeah. Okay. So at least, yeah, they both have like reliable ways to at least get some sort of speed, because it's going to be rough if they don't have that.
Right. It's by no means is it a detriment, but it's definitely going to be something that I think you're going to see a lot of those mons above that 100, similar to what we've talked about on a few other teams, be able to afford maybe putting in Adamant or Modest to be able to kind of hopefully break those regen cores a bit earlier on.
Yeah, because they can't rely on them as much as they'd like to.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, we are getting into the home stretch, and we're here with the MK Rhydons and Matt. Again, I like a lot about this team. I think it's very fast. I think it's very versatile. There's a lot of good offensive threats here that actually benefit from the Klefki and its Prankster, either screens or hazard support. I think there's a lot of different ways this team can be played out.
Yeah, looking at this team, it has a lot of potential currently going on. Like Meowscarada, great speed tier, hits really hard with Flower Trick, always critting. Noivern, another great speed. Skeleturge for its Unaware, so it can just sit there and tank things. So if anybody does, for some reason, get a Mirror Herb setup, or just overall starts trying to set up sweep, Skeleturge can kind of just come in and be like, yeah, we're stopping that. And late, they also got Lando T. I'm surprised that dropped to round 9.
It is there's a lot of mons that we've seen throughout both of these drafts that I am super surprised didn't get picked up until they did. And Lando just goes to show how I think the game and the overall meta has evolved, because I think you've rewind even as much as a year ago, and Lando could have easily been something that goes within the first couple rounds.
Yeah, the power creep, which, I mean, my roommates and I've talked about this before, the power creep in the recent generations has kind of been insane. Lando T has always been predominantly like top of like OU, and it is slowly falling. I don't think it'll ever fall out of OU, but the fact that it's just not up there like it always has been, and even now in this, where in draft it's getting picked round 9, it's like, that's kind of insane.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see, but even though it was a later pickup, the defensive synergy that he has with that and Empoleon, I think is going to be very hard to counter in a lot of ways. There's not many moves that I can think of that neutrally hits both of those.
Right. And even then, it's like, oh, you're going for a fighting move, you got Skeleturge as well.
Exactly.
So, yeah, it's just like between, I think, those three. And honestly, I love their Fire, Water, Grass core. Empoleon, Skeleturge, Meowscarada, I think that's amazing. Klefki being the Fairy, and then Steel and Empoleon as well for Noivern as their Dragon Court. That's awesome. The only thing I guess this team, to me, that it would be lacking is an electric type. It has nothing, not even in Terra.
Yeah, that's a good point. Not a lot that coverage is going to be able to help with. So, don't know if that's going to be a big hole that's going to prove to be a problem. But I definitely think he's going to be kind of lacking that a bit for those either flying types or bulkier water types.
Right. I was like, this is one of the few teams I think we've seen without like a reliable electric type, it seems.
100% agree. What I do like about this, outside of everything we've already talked about, I think that the Terra caps here are pretty strong. Noivern really appreciates that boost in power from Terra, especially going normal for those Boombursts. But even Meloetta, we saw it picked up in Scarlet without being a Terra captain, which I still think it does well, but I love it as a Terra captain. Obviously going Psychic, fighting for when we can transform into our Purette form and, get a boost on the close combats, maybe even not even having to, and just especially having a more reliable fighting type move that's not Focus Blast to be able to deal with those dark types that come out. Very just great coverage all around. I think that this thing, for as where it's at on the board, cost perspective, was a super strong pickup.
Yeah, I think this was a steal to pick up Meloetta like that, and then as well as getting Noivern, I agree.
And then we haven't even talked about Amoonguss down at the bottom too, another regen mon that I think pairs pretty well defensively just with everything that he's got so far.
That is true. Good little nice little pivot, throw out some spores to kind of stop things, just tanking hits. It's gonna be really funny if they decide not to run a regenerator 1 week and just hits them with the effect spore.
I would be surprised by seeing that, but maybe we do. I would love to catch that. No, I mean overall, I love it. I think that there's the solid removal. Looks like Hitmontop is your rapid spinner. Is there anything? Empoleon lost defog, I believe, this generation.
Yes, Empoleon had always had that, and then this generation they kind of just ripped that away from it, as well as ripping a bunch of other moves from other mons that they didn't need to. So that is kind of unfortunate. That would have been some decent removal to at least have even on an Empoleon, and to no longer have that, that's gonna hurt.
Yeah, you're limited now with that, with Hitmontop, which, I mean, it is good. I don't think it's a bad mon, but I'm dumb.
And Landa,
Noivern gets defog.
Yeah, Noivern gets that as well.
So, okay. So, not as bad as I thought. I like at least having two options like that. And Noivern's one that can come a lot more reliably, just given the good speed tier. And doesn't always have to be run offensively. Can run defensively.
Use it more as a utility mon with Frisk being able to just scout out what items your opponent has. U-turn, Roost, maybe Air Slash and Defog. Just run a utility one.
Yeah. I think Frisk is arguably one of the best abilities you're going to have in draft, and I love that it gets it.
Yeah, that's why I personally wanted to use it as well, because it's just so nice to be able to see what is it that they're doing, because that takes away your opponent's element of surprise. That's really beneficial for you. Gives you the upper hand.
Yeah, I mean the speed tiers here, they're really good, but I think they are a bit congested, I'd say. I think you have anywhere between Lando at 91 and 123. I think there's some that kind of overlap fairly well. Schizorat and Noivern, for example.
Yeah, I think they're pretty much one and the same almost.
Yeah, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing either, but I do think you're seeing a little bit of overlap there with some of the speed tiers, and that's a pretty big drop off too. And, going from those kind of high 120s, then dropping all the way down to something like Lando at 91.
Yeah, but I mean, Lando at least is always just going to reliably sit there and be able to do its Intimidate pivoting strat, so at least it could be a lot worse.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's about everything that we have here, and I think we're good to keep on moving. So strong team, and let's keep on going. All right, so Lordquarl is up next, and we're seeing very few strong picks right off the bat. Gouging Fire going in the first round. I can think of a couple VDL friends that really like a lot about it.
Gouging Fire, best pick. Should have been my round 1, but I needed the speed.
Really?
I absolutely love this mon. That mon is what carried me from week 4 on to the semifinals. I brought Gouging Fire every single week, and that's why I think it played a huge part in why I didn't lose. Him and Metagross.
Yeah, I mean, I really think that those are going to be strong. I have a newfound respect for gouging for sure. I, had to face it, and it was definitely a much bigger threat than I thought it was going to be. And I'm not mad about it. Going round 1, I think is a bit aggressive, but I think you're going to have the Gouging Fire fans kind of rally against me on that pick.
I do agree. I personally just really like the mon, but I do agree maybe it going in round 1, especially like now that we're near like the end of it, so you could have technically grabbed it round 2.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so, the odds of it getting sniped, you had, 4 picks before it got to you. Likely wouldn't have been sniped. Could have probably went a little bit lower. Who knows? But granted, also with, like, their Terapagos and Hisuian Samurott, of, like, some of those, I guess Hisuian Samurott would have been the one I would have picked first. Looking at this, just to kind of snag, like, a reliable, like, hazard setter with Hisuian Samurott and Ceaseless Edge.
Sure. No, I mean, I think this team just dominates hazards, to be honest. Obviously Samurott, Terapagos is reliable. Down lower, Orthworm gets, all the hazards as well. I think that on top of that, having really good deterrence and removal in Terapagos, Hatterene, Talonflame, I think that Quarl probably has some of the most commanding lead of hazards that we've seen in any of the teams.
Yeah, and one thing that stands out to me as well is the Hatterene pick, because then it's like, oh, now they have potential for setting up like trick rooms against all these other people who have like high speed tiers. They could just invest in like a bulky Gouging Fire, max HP and max attack, just letting the trick room do the rest of the work for covering its speed. Same with like Terapagos, going more into its offense and bulk. Samurott, like they can lean a lot more into that, or Orthworm, set up some defenses, do some body presses.
Dude, you were skipping over, I think, the best Trick Room abuser in Rhyperior, which is his other Terror Captain outside of Lycanroc. And I think under Trick Room, that thing is going to be a monster.
Oh, for sure. I'm interested to see, like, I think Trick Room abuse could 100% run house against some of these other people, because if they have a really high, like, speed tier and a lot of them up there, well, that's not going to matter to them anymore.
Exactly. Like, I love that he's got speed here with Talonflame, with Lycanroc, even Shaman at base 100. And that he kind of can play both sides of it. Like you said, with a lot of these mons, you can invest more in the bulk and slow it down to still benefit in some ways under Trick Room when it comes to these faster paced teams that he's going to be up against.
Yeah, the only downside that I would potentially see with this is the kind of lack of like overall special attack. Like, sure, you got like Shaman, Hatterene, I think Pecharunt and Terapagos, but in terms of like special wall breaking, I think they're going to have a hard time without getting the right setup. Physically, they're good. Special, I think they might kind of encounter some issues.
No, I think you're right there. It seems like overall, from a special side, the team really lacks anything that's going to be immediately hard hitting on that front. The best special attacker you have on your own team here is something like Shaman or Hat, which neither are necessarily known or valued as much for their, offensive pressure than more so than their utility.
Right. It's like a lot of those ones, they kind of need like some sort of setup or choice specs or something to really start trying to break through. I mean, Terapagos with Meteor being Power Herb, things like that. But it's like, yeah, nothing straight out the gate to really just pack a like special punch.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of this team really does rely on its setup to do exactly what's designed for. But I think with some of the pivots that you have and some of the support from all the hazards and everything like that, I don't necessarily think that's a problem.
Yeah, I do agree. Yeah, a lot of the setup ones, like for me personally, I've experienced it. Gouging Fire, it can hit hard, but it does need some setup. I mean,
yeah.
For anybody who saw anything I had in, was that my semifinals? Yeah, it was. It was my semifinals match. I had a Gouging Fire at +3 attack. Heat Crash against a max HP, max defense Phalanx, and it still lived.
Oh my!
And I'm like, this thing is at +3, and that was stab. That lived. Insane.
Oh goodness. Definitely some things that can be improved on again, but overall, plenty of good to say about it too. So I think
Absolutely.
we're good there. We're nearing the end. We got the final couple picks. So we have Sonicfan here, who in the very first round, again, we saw this in Scarlet. Wouldn't be surprised if we hear that they kind of planned a little bit together because they're very similar. Gyarados in the first round, making it your Terra Captain. Super strong Terra Captain, and I don't have any issue of picking it up. What I really like what Sonic did here was all the offensive pressure that loves being behind Aurora Veil. Gyarados allowing it to get set up. Same with the Raging Bolt for Calm Minds, and also getting access to Weather Ball. So Bolt being coverage without Terra is insanely strong.
Yeah, I do really. Aurora Veil on Alola Ninetales, that's really going to start setting up a lot of his offensive options for great success.
Yeah, I love this. There's just a lot of synergy offensively, and there's not really a lot that I think is going to have a resisting coverage here. We already talked about the Aurora Veil, the Snow Boost. There's also Electric Terrain down here to not only boost Raging Bolt even further, but in the last round he picked up Hawlucha and has now an Unburden option behind Veil. There's so much potential win cons on this team that I think every team is going to be able or has the capability to be broken by at least one of these mods, if not multiple.
Yeah, and the Pincurchin getting the Electric Terrain to give Iron Treads its Cork Drive boost, so it can go and get some more offense or even more speed.
Yeah. No, it's super strong, and I again not a big Pincurchin fan myself. I think if you go into a game with it, you're kind of going in at a 5-6 disadvantage, to be honest. I have a few Pincurchin believers in the league, and obviously Sonic is one of them. But I think it's just, it's not a great mod, but it enables great mods to be even better.
Yeah, that's the only downside is it's the only other mon with Electric Surge to set up that terrain without having to manually do it outside of Tapu Koko, which is not in the game. So it's just it is for all the Iron Mons of this game. They did not give anything else the Electric Surge, which that's the downside. That's why Pincurchin has to get picked up.
Yeah. And it's, I think it'll do well. And this team doesn't fully just revolve around its setup sweepers. I think what really is going to boost these on top of what we've already talked about even more support-wise is the hazard game. Fortress is a super reliable setter. Not the only setter. Obviously, Treads can set up rocks itself, Azelf the same. But I do like the deterrence again with Mimikyu plus a competitive boost from Milotic. I don't think no one's necessarily fearing competitive Milotic. I don't think the stats is something that people necessarily are deterred too much from, like something like some other Defiant Pokemon are. But
Right.
I still think it's something that is gonna force some prep on it, force some people to kind of be a little bit more mindful of.
Yeah, and then I love the Mimikyu pickup, which disguised with red card, perfect way to just kind of stop somebody from doing any sort of setup sweeps.
Yeah. I do think it's worthwhile to point out a few things that I think we found here. We already said it, Pinkerton's not really a Mon. And the fact that it's your second Terra Captain, I just think that means you're primarily focused on Gyarados the entire time. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it does lack some versatility in your Terra roles for sure.
Yeah, because essentially that's just a Mon that you're probably never going to Terra, where instead you could have just picked up a Beartic and just a booster energy on the
I
Iron
knew I
Treads.
liked you. The only
Hey,
other things
I lost to a Terra Beartic. Okay.
Only other things I can necessarily think of here, the terrain boost, we talked about the benefits of it. I think there are some detriments to it with these mods. I think boosting electric type moves against mons like Gyarados, Hawlucha, Milotic, they don't necessarily appreciate that, so it's going to rely a lot heavier, in Gyarados' case, on the Terra side, and then the rest of it is really going to have to need something like Veil Up to be able to kind of counteract that a bit.
Yeah, because your only other answers to it would be Terra Ground, Gyarados, and Iron Treads. So if they come in with like a strong Electro type, it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, and the sustainability into this team isn't necessarily there. So again, just more added pressure onto something like Ninetales and Aurora Veil as a whole to be able to kind of keep these mods healthy enough long enough for them to do what they need to do.
Yeah, but again, everybody still has amazing teams, a lot of good things, just some things that maybe they need to keep an eye out for in their games.
Couldn't agree more. All right, Niv, we're at the last team. We made it all the way through.
We've made it.
And so we got Astrophobe out here, and I think that this team again is a strong way to end it on. So picked up King Gammon in the first round, and on the wheel pick, got Ogerpon, Hearthflame. Personally, I think out of all the Ogerpon forms, I am the least fan of fire. I don't like being a fire type that can't run boots and is a little bit more susceptible to stealth rock damage. Especially into this team where your hazard removal itself is limited really to Excadrill. So that's going to be a bit rough.
Yeah, that is going to be quite detrimental, because having to rely only on Excadrill for trying to remove that, because I don't think even Masquerain gets like defog or anything, does it? Nope, it does not. Yeah, so I do agree. Yeah, Ogerpon Hearthflame, I know it's a really good mon, like really hard hitting like fire type, but I do agree where it's like taking the extra damage for rocks is not worth that payoff, because you can't run boots. Like you could just have like base Ogerpon still set up like things, it still hits really hard, and that one can at least run an item. This one, it's limited, but granted all the other forms are limited, but at least the other ones wouldn't take the added damage.
Yeah, no, I definitely I think it's gonna be good. I just think in a team that lacks so much hazard removal that it's gonna suffer more than the other forms would have. Now to patch some of the weaknesses that we're sharing here, obviously ground, Rillaboom is great. King Gambit appreciates it, Sneasler appreciates Excadrill. Really love that, and obviously Rillaboom and Sneasler is, a very common core that you see a lot of.
Yeah, I do agree. Like having that grassy terrain, being able to boost all that, the only ones you have to worry about is at that point, I think it's just high horsepower, or there might be something else. I think
Right.
ground move wise that it ends up like not wanting to. But I do agree with the Sneasler, Rillaboom core. King Gambit would be really appreciative not to have to deal with at least the ground weakness that it has. Same with Excadrill with the double steel types.
Sure.
Which I have noticed, yeah, this team kind of does seem to struggle a little bit with having some overlapping typings, being like Steel and Excadrill and King Gambit, Grass and Agrippon and Rillaboom, Poison in, I think, Sneasler and Haunter. So,
Yeah, the Excadrill's not going to appreciate. I know defensively likes, not being susceptible to Earthquake, but doesn't like its own Earthquakes being weakened either. So being forced to run high horsepower anytime you bring the combination of terrain and Excadrill is really going to, I think, hinder it a bit more.
yeah, that will kind of put it on the back foot. It might just have to be a little bit more careful with how they want to run it.
Yeah. The only other things I can think to point out here, there's a little bit of a struggle in my mind to deal maybe with maybe either bulkier poison types, flying. The reason I say bulkier poison types on here, I think that there's plenty that hits it neutrally, so I'm not as worried about it. Again, same concept. With your Earthquakes being weakened, you're limiting yourself to high horsepower, and things like Sneasler don't have anything that touch poisons. And then flying types as a whole, I think, do a lot of damage to some of the more important mons on the team.
Yeah, like Agrippon, Sneasler, and Rillaboom, flying is definitely going to start hurting them. So that Kilowatt Troll will start putting in a lot of work. Glide Square can do a lot of work. So definitely a couple of things for there. I do like their fairy pick in Florges, bulkier fairy that we kind of discussed previously. Good wish support. Only thing I did also notice is no dragon throughout all of this.
Yeah, that's true. I'm surprised too, because there were still plenty of good dragon types on the board through the draft.
It's like their only reliable dragon killer is gonna just be Florges. They don't have. I don't really think they have anything great when it comes to like ice or other fairy moves.
Yeah. No, that might be a hole. So we'll have to see if Astro can really kind of counter that without completing the cores. We saw a good amount of that where cores were just missing one or two mons to really fill in the holes there.
Yeah.
But I think that about wraps us up. Niv, can you think of anything else you want to mention on Astro before we end things off?
No. Overall, I mean, I really like a lot of the offense that it has, so I'm excited to see like what they end up doing with it.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, guys. Well, that wraps up Season 8's Violet Division. So I appreciate everyone that took the time to watch through it. Hope you guys all enjoyed it and appreciate the insight. Niv, thanks for joining me, man. I'm glad that you were able to kind of hop in here with us and take us through some of these teams.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So you guys make sure you check out Niv. He is actually starting to upload content himself. So you're going to see some draft games from him. In a couple of the leagues he's crossed over in. And so very excited to see him get into the space. And then, like I mentioned before, we will be back here every week for our weekly recap. So we're going to be taking a look at all the games. We're going to be taking a look at standings, next week's matchups. You guys really don't want to miss it. I want to keep you guys all updated on what's going on in both divisions. So very excited for Season 8. Very excited for both, all the teams, all the divisions, and hope you guys are ready for it as well. So that's all we got for you guys now, and we will see you guys here next week.
Later, everyone.